Welcome, everyone, to the ConTech Exec Podcast. I am Robert Zimmerman, your host. Today, I have got a very, very special guest, KP Reddy. I don't have enough time to list all of the things that this guy's into. I don't know. He's got like 13 different jobs. I can't figure it all out. I know I only have 6. So, KP, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. One of the jobs being podcast guest.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I'm taking up a bit of his time. He's a busy man. I know. It's crazy. So, and I have seen you on a couple of different podcasts. I saw you on the Procore podcast from a few months back, and I attended Groundbreak, and I saw all that kind of stuff go on. So, all good stuff. Today, I wanted to talk with you, and I'm going to tell you, I saw an article came out on LinkedIn. It was something that you had published or somebody had interviewed you. Maybe it was another podcast and somebody wrote an article about it, but they started talking about Zero RFI, which is kind of your new company. But I kind of wanted to give them a background. I want to talk about Zero RFI, but I want to know, I always ask this when I start with contact founders. I say, what in the world makes you want to be, actually in that space? And what happened that made you go so crazy?
Yeah. So, I think my story is a little bit different, right? It was I would say like a 30-year overnight success for me. I'm a second generation civil engineer. And so my first experience around the intersection of like engineering, construction, and technology was when my dad had his own firm and bought an IBM PC in 1983 because a professor friend of him told him that he should use a computer. So my dad buys the computer and says, "Son, go figure this thing out." Like literally, I'm
Yeah.
unboxing it. I'm like, okay, like because he thought like me playing Space Invaders on my Atari was the same as using a computer, right? Like,
You had some qualifications. You had some
right? I had no
qualifications
idea,
there.
right? It's like kind of his first time seeing one, right? So that was my first exposure, and from there, basically, I was like building stuff for him, taking one thing we start to realize in engineering, almost everything exists in books. And in those books are tables. And most of those tables, if codified, today in Excel or in software, back then it was just the same thing, right? You're just codifying a bunch of tables because ultimately software is just a bunch of tables, right? It's just a bunch of images are actually table files, right? They're all just tables. So that was like my early exposure, and then did a whole bunch of stuff there. Then I went to Georgia Tech and studied civil engineering. And Georgia Tech Civil Engineering Department, funny enough, my advisor was the first professor to put classes on the internet. So 1991, we were putting classes on the internet, and I was sitting in the little computer lab with my advisor, typing in things in this thing called HTML to be rendered in a browser called Mosaic, which was the precursor to Netscape, which Mark Andreessen developed. And that was my second entry point, right? Was okay, there's this internet thing. So, from there I went off and went and worked as a civil engineer, specifically doing geotechnical and field inspection and steel inspection, like all the engineering inspection work. And on the side was building a startup to do construction management on the internet, on the web. So I left my job in 1997 to focus on that. And I always say I was funded by Discover cards, basically cash advanced against my Discover card. Feel like, wow, you got Discover to fund you? I'm like, well, kind of.
Yeah. In a roundabout way, yes.
Yeah, in a roundabout way. Yeah, they were my first investor. So, but ran out of money. I was running out of money, advanced $1,000 against credit cards, and was starting to run out of money because the general contractors were like, boy, everything's going to come down to me rolling out a set of plans on the hood of my Ford F-150, and this internet thing is a joke.
Yes.
And that wasn't one guy; that was every guy telling me this.
You were in the role of the subcontractor there, my man. You're in the they're in the pay for play game, right?
Yeah.
It's like I get paid when I get paid, you get paid.
Yeah. So pivoted, ended up going into the telecom space because at that same time, the telecom industry was going through a lot of growth, deploying internet routers and stuff. And so they started using my software to project manage deployment of switches and routers and all. Grew that company from 2 to 1,200, made a bunch of acquisitions to grow that business. And then, was kind of out of the industry, but had been successful. And then After that, I ran into these guys running a company called Revit Technology Corporation. I'd done pretty well. I would say that was like my last kind of job. And then so from there, was looking to invest in that company, went on a 6-week vacation, came back, and they were sold to Autodesk. But I believed that BIM had a lot of opportunity. There was a lot of potential.
I like a past tense there.
Yeah,
You
had a lot
had
of
a lot of
potential.
opportunity.
Had a lot of potential, squandered for many reasons, and built a company around that and sold that to a group in the Bay Area. And then just kept building, went to go work for Frank Gehry for a little bit, wrote a couple books, and then semi retired to go work at my alma mater, Georgia Tech, and just was running their incubator and teaching and that kind of thing there. And then after that, started back investing through Shadow Ventures. So started a venture capital fund to invest in tech startups to hopefully help founders have someone that has capital to help them, but also industry knowledge. Like they don't have to explain to me what pre-con is. They don't have to explain to me. I'm like, save those 3 slides for everybody else. I don't need them.
Yeah,
Right.
right? Yeah.
So start investing, and Shadow Ventures is backed by some of the largest GCs and engineering firms like a Hensel Phelps or a PCI or Whiting Turner and Walter P. Moore and Thornton Tomasetti. And so we've got a great roster there. And that Shadow Ventures continues to invest and grow. But then, I saw AI show up, right? And I was like, this is going to be like BIM, right? People are going to take something that has power, potential, kind of unlimited potential. And it's not going to be the technology that fails. There's nothing wrong with BIM technology. It's just that the business models never changed. Nothing about the industry changed. And in many ways, BIM became just more overhead than it did actually create results. And ultimately, the textbook I wrote in 2011 is called BIM for Owners and Developers. And I kind of outlined how BIM could be impactful to a simple idea like, let's build buildings better, cheaper, faster. Very simple, right? And I thought BIM could do that.
Yeah, who couldn't want to be on that, bandwagon,
Right.
right?
Right. So nothing in my book came true. So I said, okay, well, here's AI. We're going to do the same thing, right? We're going to do the same exact thing. And I started seeing the pattern. Oh, let's use AI for estimating. Let's use AI for facilities management. It's same thing, right? Same exact ideas that we were doing with BIM, we're now doing with AI. And I said, okay, hold on, this is not going to work. So I started talking to a friend of mine who's the number 2 guy at General Catalyst Partners. He brought me in to see the CEO of General Catalyst, and we're sitting around, and he looks at me, he goes, KP, like, I think you're right. Software is not the problem. It's a transformation of the industry that has to happen. And so why don't you write something up for me? Like, what do you think? If you had unlimited money, what would you do? And these guys are some of the largest investors in the world, right? They're one of the biggest early investors in Anthropic and Stripe. They've had a lot of wins. They've done very well. So I took him seriously. If someone unserious says, hey, if you had unlimited money, what would you do? It's like, well, let's go have a beer and we'll talk about it. I'm not going to actually do some work. But these are people that actually think that way and have access. So we came up with a plan about a year and a half ago. They funded it. And we built in stealth mode for about a year, right? Because there was no benefit of being out in the open. And then we launched a few weeks ago. So the company's name is Zero RFI, which is funny because it was actually a placeholder name because we're in stealth mode. I didn't care about the name, but everybody kind of loved it. They were
Yeah,
like,
it kind of
that
piques my interest.
kind of tells that's what like the name of in the day and age where company names don't say much about the company. There were everybody's been like, hey, your name says it all. It says what your North Star is, right? This is your North Star is to have 0 RFIs. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe there's probably some other things. But, so that's the idea. I mean, the idea is not to be a technology company, but to be a next generation owner's rep and work with the owner to manage how they do site selection, how they design the buildings, how they hire architects and engineers, how they put things out to bid, how they collaborate with their GC and subs, how they collaborate with the building suppliers, and how we think about facilities maintenance and onwards, right? So the entire cycle of the building. We kind of joke around. It's site selection to demolition. That's our life cycle, and we're going to be there every step of the way with the owner to help them understand that. Now, I think what's what's interesting about that, people go like, so what? You're trying to get rid of architects? You're trying to get rid of contractors? It's like, that is actually not the goal. The goal is actually the opposite, right? So you're in the business. How many times have you felt like, hey, I'm delivering a different set of value than the next guy?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's different. Each owner's different. They've got a different, idea of how this is supposed to roll.
Right. But the problem is a lot of times the owners, either they don't have the capabilities because they don't build often enough, or their owners' reps can't be bothered. Right. So
Yeah.
if someone gives me an apple and an orange, I want to know those are different fruits. Right. I want to understand, oh, that's a grapefruit. Like I want to understand that. And with the power of I can actually understand the differences. Right. I can get into the weeds, like, oh, you're taking this approach. But what we've done with the industry is we've said everything has to be standardized. I need apples to apples. I mean, what is bid leveling? Right? Bid leveling is saying, I'm going to make everything apples to apples and make a decision on that, which made a lot of sense when we didn't have a powerful technology like AI in our back pocket.
Yeah.
Because it made sense. Like, I don't know if you know, there's a lot of controversy going on right now with CSI master format that they're trying to like license you to use it every time you use it.
I use it. I have a very, very small business and I use the CSI format simply because I need to keep my data in order. But I know it's never finished, right? It's always something new.
And so the point though is like when you think about some of these standards, we did that because we needed to be organized because it's very complicated, right? But what I'm saying is like AI can kind of uncomplicate things. So if I get 10 bids from 10 different drywall subs and they're all very vastly different, I might say like if I have to do it manually or through spreadsheets, like it's not worth my time to figure this out. Right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to throw out the top bid. I'm going to throw out the low bid. I'm going to see who I have a relationship with in previous
That
work history with.
There's the big key. I'm going to see who I know from there because when I go to value engineer you, when I'm beating you up on your bid, I want to know that we're going to still be friends and have a beer afterwards.
Right, right. Which is one of those other lies, right? Value engineering.
It's one of my
There's no
favorite ones. Yeah,
there's
there's
no
no such
engineering.
thing.
Look, I'm an engineer. I've never seen any engineering involved in value engineering. It's a nice way to say I'm going to kick you in the face, right?
That is right. It's a nice way to say, I think your bid is a little too high. We need to massage it just a little bit. I still want you to do the same scope of work, but I want you to rethink your pricing.
Yeah. But I'm not negotiating. We're value engineering. Because
That's right.
negotiating
That
would
is
be
correct.
mean. Negotiating,
Yeah,
I'm a jerk.
that's what I'm saying. We can beat each other up, but we're still going to have a beer afterwards. That's the key.
That's value engineering.
That's value engineering.
So that's kind of our idea. One of the stories I talk about with this when people are like, well, you're just trying to use AI against us. It's like, no, that's actually not the case. I'm actually trying to use AI for you. So when you think about it, the amount of rework, what I will tell is like, we say cheaper, better, faster. Fine. That's everyone wants cheaper, better, faster. But what I say is in our industry, because of the risk, because of the schedules, what we really want is predictability. What you want to know is if I bid
Yes.
this job and I get it, I will predictably make the amount of money I projected. If I make more, fantastic. If I make less, horrible. But ultimately, I just want to have predictability. And if I'm the owner and I get predictability because my architects are working around this idea of predictability, if my GC understands that, hey, gets better data and can be predictable, and the sub and everyone else, right? Because think about when projects go long, how do you manage that scheduling? It's like, oh, this project went long. I scheduled another project to start. Now I'm late for that. It's a lot. So I think ultimately what we want is predictability throughout the entire vendor supply chain ecosystem.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what we're really trying to do. And one of the companies that actually people hate that I use this, but Walmart did so much for their supply chain. Purdue Chicken would not be Purdue Chicken today if it wasn't for Walmart, because Walmart said, if I can make my suppliers better, if I can give them better data, because I've got good data, right? And I can give you better data, then you'll improve your business, right? Because so if you're a drywall sub, and I just pick on drywall subs because some of my best friends are drywall subs, right? If I can tell you as a drywall sub, like, hey, based on all our projects, here's what's happening with project durations and staffing challenges and pricing. then you get better predictability in your business. And that makes you a better supplier to me so that I
And
can
it's a
go out
very
and deliver
and that's a very
predictability.
local and that's a very local equation
Yeah.
quite often. Like you're not going to be able to do the same type of thing in California as you're going to do in North Dakota, those types of things.
Yeah.
It's very local.
Yep. So that's the general thinking, right? So what we've done is we've built a series of tools that helps owners, reps do better, right? Them do a better job. When I talk to contractors about owners, reps, like, oh, those guys, bunch of paper pushers that have never stepped foot on the job site.
They don't have a very good reputation, I got to be
Right.
honest.
So we're buying those companies that don't have a great reputation. We're arming them with great tools so they can spend more time on the job site with the customer in the teams versus just behind their computer approving and denying and value engineering invoices. And we've done that by creating a set of tools that helps them better understand what's going on with the project because ultimately we believe human judgment rules. But the problem with human judgment is infinite if you are given the right information at the right time. And when your inbox is full of 1,000 emails and 20 Procore alerts and 20 alerts from this system and that system, and thousands of RFIs and thousands, like all of it, right? How do you how can a human make a decision? How does human judgment have space to work
Well, I
when
mean,
you're just being inundated, right?
yeah, well, I mean, Kahneman did a study on this whole thing. There's been several studies done on this. It's like, it's not necessarily humans make the best decisions, even if there's logically all the information right in front of them. They will make the one that suits them best at the time. And it depends on several different things that happen, like who they're surrounded by, or, they'll have the logic in front of them and they may not make the logical decision.
Yeah. It's interesting. A long time ago, I need to look these guys up. I haven't talked to them. It's a speaking group called Afterburner. This guy, Tom Mad Dog Murphy. It's a bunch of former fighter pilots, right? And they come and do like leadership talks and all that. And we had hired them for one of our sales kickoff conferences when this is 2001, 2002, right? Like way back when. And these guys talked about being a fighter pilot. And they came up with this term. So think about how impact. I mean, I haven't talked to these guys in 3 decades, 2 decades, whatever.
But you
But I still
remember it
remember this,
today.
right?
Yeah.
I still remember it today, right? They talk about being a fighter pilot. And when they made mistakes was in a term they used called task saturation. In other
I
words,
got you.
you have all these blinking lights. You got someone flying that way, someone flying that way. You got your co-pilot yelling at you, and you got all these flashing knobs and screens and all that, right? And his point was like, that's when you make mistakes, when you have task saturation. And I think about that. I need to look these guys up, see if they're still around. But that's what we deal with. I mean, you're going to get off this podcast and what's the first thing you're going to do? Check your email. What's going to be in it? All kinds of nonsense. All kinds of nonsense.
Yeah, most of the stuff I'm going to delete. It's going to be I'm not messing with that. No, yeah.
So that's really what we're trying to solve. And like I said, I have some great friends in construction. Folks like Hensel Phelps and Whiting Terrell. They're all investors and friends of mine. One of the things we've talked about with them a lot of times is if you think about our industry, the construction industry, the amount of mental health challenges and suicide rates are out of control. And it's like, why are we shocked? We put people under physical pressure, mental pressure, long hours, nothing but stress. And then we wonder, like, why? Why is everybody having problems? It's like, well, of course they're having. And then we put them in 100-degree heat.
They're in task saturation mode. They at all times. If you stop and think about it, former superintendent myself, been out there, done it in the field in the 100-degree heat and all those kind of things. So when you get out there, what you don't, you're basically putting out fires the whole time. Because if you've got 20 to 30 guys working underneath you and you're like, okay, I need you to finish that up over here. And then, you're trying to just weed out the dumb questions to get to the ones that actually are going to impact you and affect that next day. So kind of to your point, yes, task saturation is a huge deal. But I kind of want to get back to the whole kind of zero RFI thing, because I would love a world where there was zero RFI, but we're in a strange model where the RFI at some points is where people make their money. And, do you get around that? where, hey, look, this is where I make my money based upon, how we're trying to do this. Risk management is basically saying I'm going to take advantage of, or I see where the RFIs are going to come before I get there.
Yeah, like I have to wake up every morning. People are doing their best work and showing their best face, right? So I don't subscribe to, and I'm sure they exist, just like not everybody in this world is a good human being, right? But what I would say is a lot of this, like idea that like, oh, people low bid and then they make it up in change orders, right? That there's this exploitive thing. A lot of the contractors I talk to tell me like, I would rather make a fair profit than endure the back and forth and justification with an owner or an owner's rep to get a change order done. And also, what's the likelihood of that customer coming back to me? And if they do come, like, I mean, I think most people, what they prefer is a customer look at them and say, look, I want to hire you based on your experience and your capabilities and your track record. So I just want to negotiate with you, right? That's the ideal world, right? Very few people will go through a negotiated process. Of course, right now things are kind of frothy. So if you're building data centers, you can do whatever you want to, apparently, right now. But in most cases, the customer's not going to build that trusting relationship with you if you've beaten them up with change orders. They're not. They're going to be like, you know what? You're just like every other contractor. I'll let you be on the bid list for the next job, right? So I think most people believe that if you can give me better predictability around the work and how much I'm going to make and when I'm going to get done and have a good relationship after the fact with the customer, I would sign up for that all day long. So I don't think, which by the way, I built a business around this using BIM back in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. We were evaluating the constructability of buildings using BIM, doing clash detection, all this other stuff to figure out like what are the issues going to be. And did I have contractors come to me after the fact saying, hey, here's a project, I'll pay you to see how many potential change orders there could be because I might low bid it. Did that happen? Absolutely, but very infrequently.
Very
And by the
infrequently,
way,
yeah.
those are the people, they don't last, right? They don't last. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get paid for something that you're entitled to that was out of your hands. 100%, right? People should get paid for things that are out of their hands. But I think if you're a GC or a sub that just bangs on people for change orders and that is your mentality, that's your mental model, you won't last for long,
Probably not good.
right?
So, but it brings to mind that gap right now, maybe between the AEC industry. I always kind of find it really weird. The owner goes out, hires a architectural firm to design their building, those kind of things. And then the owner also goes out and hires a GC. And the GC goes through the drawings and says, hey, these drawings are 70% complete and we're missing this, this, and this. And the errors and emissions clause, kind of kicks in on these different things. And so that's kind of where the RFIs come from because, hey, these aren't quite complete. Right. But then there's no authority level on the back end to decide to say, hey, you really need to fix these because, or do you go to the owner and say, hey, you got to tell your architect to go fix these things because we've really got a problem here. We can't continue. Now the schedule is extended for this amount of time and those types of things. I think that's the gap maybe that you're trying to solve for here.
Yeah. So the way we look at it, right? So the way our AI, and we have an AI platform that we built from scratch called Foundation Zero, right? So Foundation Zero has different modules, different tools. One of the tools can read plans and specs, is what it does, right? Now, if you wanted to read plans and specs to understand the carpentry work, if you feed it that skill, it goes and does that. If you say, oh, I want it as an electrical contractor, it goes and does that, right? So what we do is we start with our designers, with our product, with our tool called Project Charter. Project Charter, we sit down with owners and we say, what are you trying to build? And we upload the financials, previous projects they've done. And what that system does is it spawns a bunch of little chatbots and sends it all to all the stakeholders. So let's say 350 bed hospital. Here's the financials. Here's the programming for it. Here's the requirements. Now, who all are the stakeholders? Well, these doctors, this nurse, this patient, this board of director, this facilities manager. So it sends out a chat bot and starts asking them questions. Like, here's what we're doing with this new building. Want to ask you a few questions, and then they answer it. And all those chatbots collect all that data, puts it into the system, and says, okay, here is the building. Here's what the customer wants. This is what the owner wants, right? Then it takes that and creates a set of schematic drawings across all disciplines. So now we're going to the architect with the owner to say, this is what I want. This is exactly what I want. Now you go finish it, right? You do your architectural thing, you look at codes, you work with your engineer, you do all those things, right? Now, when you send me those set of drawings back, your schematics or your DDs or whatever, our system's going to review it and say, did you meet our initial requirements? Which might be like, there's going to be 10 operating rooms. That's weird. You guys drew 8, right? So we're going to reject it based on it didn't meet the requirements. And so what that does is that cuts down the design time. Now, we're not doing that to tell architects, hey, we want to cut your fees. Because quite honestly, the fees are small compared to like bad outcomes. Right? So what we're
Right.
doing is giving them feedback to say like, hey, this doesn't meet the requirements. So the hope is they can work on the details. So then they come up with the bid package, right? Here's the bid package. Then we put it into our tool called Project Bridge. Project Bridge analyzes all the plans and specs. And literally, we have like agents that are little subcontractors that read the plans and specs and say, can I build this?
So in
Can I
place of
build?
in place of actual subcontractors going in, these agents are now going in and acting as said subcontractors, saying feasibility wise, can this be built?
Right. It's running a pre-con. Can I estimate and schedule this? What are the issues? What are the conflicts? What should the scheduling look like? And here's all my questions, right? Which are essentially like virtual RFIs.
Sure, sure, but it's
That
pre-planned. Yeah.
that gets pushed back to the architect and engineer. Hey, we have a bunch of RFIs.
Okay. Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize we put that out to bid. You didn't put it out to bid. Our virtual contractor tried to build it, and this was the issues.
So your virtual contractor, you're building that off of what information? How?
CDs.
Okay.
CDs. We have connectivity to some of the suppliers to understand availability of product. You know, when you talk about like substituting something, one was something specified that doesn't even exist. By the way, that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then is it available?
Yeah.
So we can run some of that analysis too. So then it comes back to the design team with, in my experience, 1,500 RFIs. So then they fix them. And then when they resubmit to our system, it checks to see if they fixed it. Then we put it out to bid.
Right. You're qualifying the pre-qualifications. Yeah, I get it. No, it totally makes sense to me.
So do we end up at 0 RFIs today? Probably not. Do we do better? Absolutely.
Right, right. The idea, the goal, right? Ultimately, the goal would be 0 RFI, the perfect build, I guess, what you would call it, Yeah, I get it.
So if
You
you
know, the
think
thing that,
about
no, I just, the things that I see in this whole thing is when the trades get involved, right? They've got you get to that third level now. You've pre-qualified the whole thing in the system, and I love that idea. Because again, it takes a bit less work off the trade. Because imagine any kind of work that a sub has to do in a short period of time when that bid is due, right? And he doesn't submit it to the very last minute anyway. And he's trying to make sure he doesn't miss anything, right?
Mhm.
Is that information available to them? Like, hey, this is what we've already reviewed when you put this out?
Yeah, that's the whole idea, right? If I can give you better data,
Yeah.
you can give me like once again, it's not about trying to beat anyone up. It's about if I give you better data, you give me better predictability on price, schedule, and outcomes, and we all get to benefit from that, right? And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do is really give. And the problem is the owner is highly incentivized to do this, but they generally don't have the capabilities, and their owner's reps don't have the capabilities to do this. So what we're doing is we're actually going out and buying owner's rep firms. So our first one we bought was Brookwood Group, 35-year-old owner's rep, program manager, started by George Heary, who's since passed away. Funny enough, George Heary was the CEO of Heary and Heary, and my dad was his chief structural engineer. That's how far back we go. George Heary, when he was alive, he was like, "Yeah, I remember you coming to the office when you were 4." This
Yeah, you known it for a while. Yeah.
we've all done it. But they almost invented this idea of program management and bridging documents, et cetera. And so what we're doing is using AI to execute on this stuff. And the idea is better outcomes, right? The idea is like, if I give you better information, that means you can staff right. That means you can everybody needs to make a profit. Everybody's waking up trying to make a profit. That's okay.
Yeah. We all got families to feed. Yeah.
Yeah. But let me give you better predictability so you can do your job better.
Well, I definitely think so. I've gone on a little whirlwind tour with one of my clients. Took about 3 weeks, went to a bunch of different job sites, and I won't say any names or anything like that, but I definitely think there's a huge problem in that owner's rep area where, and I don't know if this will continue to evolve. There's several things, but owner's rep is reworking schedule based upon what the owner thinks needs to happen without any education over exactly how things get built. Literally, they were coming with a piece of paper and says, no, don't worry about the master schedule, which is, on your Primavera or whatever it's on. Don't worry about that. Here, I'm going to hand you this piece of paper. This is what I want you to do this week. And then I need you to go over and fix these 3 things from last week where I told you could go over. It's this weird thing. It's like, this is not the schedule, right? And this is certainly not the master schedule. And all of a sudden, as soon as you introduce that kind of thinking into a job, it's almost like this weird domino effect because they have no idea how it's going to trip up that next 3 layers because they've gone off and done this and I don't know why they do it. Maybe it's because they've been incentivized somehow to try to look better to the boss to say, hey, by the way, we did this part and we got it done 2 weeks earlier, but we have zero idea how it impacted the schedule 6 weeks from now. Now, I saw some shit out there that I could not even fathom. When I walked the job site, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Just things that I saw from my 30 minutes of standing on the job site going, well, this is out of sequence and this shouldn't be here. And why aren't we done with this part and what happened here? Again, it was RFIs on my part, just walking the job for 30 minutes going, this is a crazy way to be doing this. And yet it continues to happen. What do they say? In the all major projects, 98% are over budget, over schedule. And I mean, that's still a statistic gets thrown around all the time. This is insanity. And especially, I think that's why I wanted to talk to you, because the hyperscale world and people that are building these data centers, it's a massive, massive dollar amount that we're talking about here that has huge ramifications and huge economic impact. So if we're not getting this stuff on time or on budget, what are we doing? What happens?
No, 100%. I think what happens is some people benefit from this chaos, but ultimately you don't benefit because you're trying to, if you're a sub, you're trying to manage resources. You're trying to manage the availability of your people. You're trying to make sure, I'm sure while some of your teams might love overtime, as a business owner, you're probably not thrilled with it, right?
Nobody likes
You're
overtime.
not thrilled with it, right? And so this idea, like I think generally speaking, people want to get home on time, right? They want to leave a job site on time. They want to be at home on time. They want to make a fair wage for their work.
Yes.
Right. I think that's ultimately. But if that predictability that the owner wants has to trickle down. Now, the problem is a lot of owners don't build often enough to know these things. And sometimes the owner's rep, they believe their role is to be agent of doom and just beat people up, beat up your invoice. I'm going to come tell you, like, this is what the schedule needs to be because my client says so. Does your client have a magic wand? So part of the job as a great owner's rep is to give your customer really good data about making decisions. Like, oh, do you want to do this? Great. We can do that. Schedule's going to be off. We can do that. It might cost a little bit more. Right? You tell me if there's ever been a contingency budget on any project that has not been used. It's not, if you use it on every project, it's not really contingency.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just
That's
called
right.
the budget.
It's almost it's this weird. It's almost to say with like Parkinson's law. If you give a certain
Yeah,
amount of time to something, it's actually going to take that much time, no matter how long it actually really should take.
right.
If you give
And it's
somebody,
honest. Yeah,
well, and that's what I say about
the people that are
right.
using AI well right now, it's all Parkinson law. They're not telling their bosses take them less time.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I also see the same thing about budgets even out in the field. One of my biggest arguments is to say I do not think that a foreman or a superintendent should know what the budget package is in the field. But yet several companies still do it. They say, hey, you've got X amount of dollars and this should cover your hours. These dollars cover your hours and the material that you're using. And they say that to say that's my productivity. But then what happens is you get what I call the hour shuffle, where I had some budget over here. We're kind of going to go over. I don't want to look bad, so I'm going to shuffle a few hours over to this cost code that we're using. And then getting back to that nice data that you're trying to look for, you're not going to find it. It's not clean because we're doing the number shuffle.
Yeah.
And it's not clean, accurate data to say, hey, by the way, we really don't make this amount of money on this thing.
So one of the things we're doing that I think so I do think, like I said, I have to wake up every morning, man, and believe that people are giving me their best work and are ethical and believe, and actually have a belief system that when you're working on a elementary school, you actually care that you're building something for kids.
Yeah,
Right? When you're working on a hospital, that you actually care that you're going to be a place of healing. Like, I have to believe this, right?
I got it.
Because otherwise, why would you be in this industry? It's not the most fun. Like, your opening question to me was like, what drug you into this world, right?
Well, and I hate to be the pessimist in this group, between you and I realize I'm the pessimist because, again, I probably come from a little bit different. I come from that ground level. So I know, like I was a carpenter's apprentice in 10 years, journeyman carpenter. So I come from the levels like I'm sitting on the back of my truck filling out my time card going, yeah, I think I did this, this, and this. And I could have cared less
Yep.
at the time.
But you probably cared about your work. You didn't care about the administration, right?
That is
I
right.
think there is something interesting, right? I was talking to the CEO of a big construction company. And I was like, the most inexpensive thing you can do to improve employee morale. This is like a 10,000 person company. You want to improve morale for free. Make sure everyone knows it's their building. In other words, let them allow that 22-year-old straight out of college that maybe flew a drone on the job site once. Does it cost you anything for that young person to say, hey, that's my building? Costs you nothing. But the power of being able to have attribution to a physical structure that will last for 20, 30, 50 years. I mean, I still drive through, I live in Northern California now, but I lived in Atlanta for years. My dad was chief engineer of MARTA and Erie and Portman. I still take my kids across the skyline and say, hey, your grandfather, that's his building, right? And I don't think look, this thing right here, it's going to be in the trash in a year, right? It might be really cool. It might be a really cool thing and be very productive, but it does nothing around like permanence in society, right? This is going to be in the trash. It's going to be in a landfill. The
I
stuff
know
we
several
built,
trades. Yeah, I know several
yeah,
trades, and I totally agree with you. When we drive by, I do it today. When I go
yeah,
back to Indianapolis, I go visit my folks. It's like I go through the city and I'm showing my wife, oh yeah, but that building, I was hanging out the window about 6 stories up. We did all those things. And that's absolutely true.
And I think now more than ever in this like AI, what's going to happen to the future with jobs and everything. I mean, it's so funny. When I was working, I was a geotechnical engineer, field engineer. I would rappel down into 100-foot caissons to inspect rock.
Good
Everything I
time.
inspected and touched was below the foundation. But when I drive by buildings, that's my building.
That's right.
I'm going to take
That's right.
credit, man. Like, that's my building, right?
Oh, well, because there is a sense of pride. Again, especially if you raise something up out of the ground, you're a part of it. Like there is a sense of pride. there's a sense of pride in dropping inside of a 150-foot hole. It's a little bit scary. You know what I mean? It's kind of like hanging out a 6-story building, with those kind of things. It's a little
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
whole way down wondering, I went to college for this? I literally went to college to go be down a hole. Like, this is
That
like,
is,
does not make
see,
sense. Right?
I think, and that might be the misnomer about, construction in general is the fact that, you go to college or you don't go to college and you get into this thing and then you realize the situations you're into in like that first job or that whatever that internship, you're like, holy crap, this is what I went to college for. This is what I'm going to be getting into. It's like, well, it does get better. I mean, a lot of times. And sometimes you look back on those things. Like I still look at the days when I was up, walking the steel and doing the things like that. It's like, it scares the hell out of me now. But back then, man, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm still kind of proud of it. You're like, oh, yep, I did that. Yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah. I mean, and that's back to my first point, right? I have to believe that those of us, the majority of us in the industry, are trying to deliver our best work for the best outcomes on any given day. Because otherwise, if it was just about making a couple extra bucks, there's so many other industries we could be in, right? And we all know this is a long game. Look, my dad was in the business. I'm in the business. My kids are in the business. This is a long game, and the one thing that matters is reputation. And we didn't need the internet or social media. Like we all love to talk.
Yeah.
Oh, don't work with that guy. Let me tell you. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't last long in this industry if you do crappy work or treat people poorly. It just doesn't work that way. So I'll get back to my initial, I think we have a bunch of great people that want to deliver their best work. And if I can help them bring more predictability to their businesses, to their lives, and have a better relationship on the outcomes with the owner, then yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I think that's a good goal to have, and I'm glad that you're a part of it. I know you've got a lot of stuff out there that you've written. I will recommend it to everybody that you take a look at KP's writings. I mean, if you're a Substack fan, you're pretty much a prolific writer. So you've got a lot of stuff out there, stuff that you write about. So thank you for all that. I do thank you for being with me today. I do appreciate it. I know your time is valuable. Like having a good conversation with you about these things. Love the idea of Zero RFI, and I wish you much success with it.
All right. Thanks, man.
Well, folks, that is all for today. I hope KP will come back and visit us again in a few months. We'll talk more about Zero RFI, maybe a little bit, see how well it's doing, and hope it's doing great. But until then, y'all stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.